Okay, it's preparing to live stream the meeting.
And then when we're on, will you be still sharing your screen?
Yes, I think so. No. Okay, we are live.
It should still play audio technically, right? When we're in this space. John? I'll test it. Yeah, so our audio is still on. So if everyone just be aware of that when we're going. Yeah, so our audio is still on. So if everyone yeah, so just don't say anything dumb, you know.
Technical difficulties.
On the gigantic dual monitor I have, this is really bright.
That's something that you should tell everybody. If you're doing two different things, you got to make sure that you're on night mode. Otherwise, it reflects onto your face that you're doing things during class. And if you have glasses, the screen will reflect.
See, I think Garrett should be on the panel.
I think you should too. So where can I get the link? My mom wants to watch.
Yeah, I'm gonna post it right now.
My mommy wants to watch. I've not seen my mom in months.
I just wanted to let you all know that this is going to be recorded, just so that you are all nodding in agreement.
Air signature.
It is illegal to.
All right, link has been sent out. So yeah, look alive.
Actually, Garrett, can you actually post that in the chat box too, in case anybody in this Zoom call wants to send that link forward?
I can.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Oh, wait, I can't go from here to my phone. I can type it out. HTTPS.
Email it to yourself.
I can type it. It's okay.
Okay.
Old-fashioned way to go about getting something.
I don't think it's worth it, but okay. If you have Chrome, there's actually a way you can send it from your PC to your phone.
That's more complicated to me than typing it. Although I appreciate
But it's pretty nice. It's just like
that.
send.
It takes my mom probably another 20 or 30 minutes to log on to anything. So the earlier she can start logging on to it, the more chances is she'll get on before it's over.
So yeah, but my mom's the same way.
Oh, that lady. You guys are cute.
What is the name of your department, Wayne?
Social science. Night, night, Auntie. Night, night. You want to say hi? You want to say hi to Auntie Patty?
Why is it a picture?
You want to say hi to Auntie
Why
Patty?
is it a picture?
Huh?
Why is it a picture?
A picture?
It's a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Uncle John.
Why is there just a picture instead?
Oh, because he's trying to stay off the screen. So that's all. It's time for bed, baby girl.
Yeah, but I just want to say good
Good night.
night. I just wish you.
Good night, Nadia.
I love you.
I love you. Bye.
Oh, is she gone? Eliza came to say hi to her. You want to say hi?
Oh, yeah, she just left, went straight to that bed.
Okay. Oh, she ran off.
Water.
Where's that coming from? Who's having a discussion in their house about $5,000? Somebody is. It must have been Wendy's.
Wendy, you're working from, that's like your workstation, right?
This is my workstation, yeah.
How are the kids coping at home?
Well, my other two, so we decided instead of homeschooling Eliza, she went back to her private school. I just made that
Oh,
decision
okay.
on Monday at 12 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
So they started classes on Tuesday, and it's actually been really great.
Good.
She's changed. She just seems more motivated and focused, and it
Mhm.
was a good decision because they just changed the program from how they were originally going to do it.
Yeah.
So we went for that. Jeffrey is perfect for homeschooling. He loves it. He loves the flexibility. I love the time with him.
Yeah.
We're not so tied down to things because we can stop and explore carnivorous plants.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny because he's telling me things that I have to go look up. He's like, I'm full of viscosity. And I'm like, excuse me, let me Google that real quick. It's a lot of fun with him, except it's like between first and second, what do I do during my breaks? I run over to see what he's done and to appear to hold him accountable and to set him up for the next thing. But really plan to sit with him at lunch.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
that's what I do during my breaks as a mom.
Mm-hmm. Double duty.
Yes, there is no Cobra Kai or all that stuff I said. That's what I would like to do. None of which happens, not even at night.
Right.
What's a 2-minute drill?
Just get ready, warm up.
All right. Welcome, everyone. This is our third in a series of distance learning panel. And tonight we are going to be talking about all things middle school and high school, but I think that a lot of what you'll hear can apply to some elementary school students as well. Tonight we have two teachers with us. We have Wendy Lee for middle school, representing middle school here. And Wendy is it on your screen? And then we have Mr. Wayne Toe representing high school, social science. And Wendy teaches ELA. And then we have two college students with us. We have Caitlin Wong and Alyssa Tong, and they're going to be sharing some tips for studying in a distance learning situation, and also just their experiences having completed high school and being in college. So teachers, if you want to just give us a little bit of background about what you're teaching, so that we can have a little bit of background information on you.
All right, I'll go first. I'm Wayne, and I teach, right now my current schedule is AP US History and AP World History, so it's AP all day.
I'm Wendy. Right now I'm teaching English 8 honors in the middle school at Smedberg Middle School. And then I have a section of beginning English learners for the newcomers to America who've been here 3 years or less.
All right, thank you. And then Caitlin and Alyssa, do you want to share with us where you go to school and what your majors are?
Yeah, I'm Alyssa. I go to Cal Poly. I'm a graphic communication student and I'm minoring in packaging. So basically that's like graphic design with an emphasis on like technology and machinery, as well as the 3D version of that, so packaging.
So it's not like the art of how to get that plastic on the box, right? It's actually.
It's broad. It has both actually. So we do what adhesives work for certain types of things, what temperatures work for certain things, how to store certain papers, what paper is made of, all that type of stuff. But then also like, ooh, art, fun, looks nice, design, that as well.
Nice.
I'm Caitlin. I go to UC San Diego, and I'm majoring in literature and writing and minoring in human development.
All right, thank you. So Wendy and Wayne, you are both veteran teachers. And last week we heard what went through some elementary teachers' minds. What went through your minds when you realized that you would be distance learning, at least at the beginning of this school year?
For me, it was sort of a double whammy because as a parent, I was super relieved because there would just be so much less exposure and finally we had a plan. But as a teacher, I was also relieved to finally hear of a plan, but I had no idea what to plan. And so it was like, yes, we're set, but what is that going to look like? I have no vision of it at all. And so at least we could start moving somewhere where I had no clue. So, you know, it was up and down and high and low and scary and peaceful, and it just kind of went all over the place. But it was just one big hole also of where we're going with this. So mixed emotions.
What about you, Wayne?
Yeah, same thing. The safety issue in terms of both for myself, for my kids, and just for everybody as a whole. So that was a relief on one end. But you also knew like what the cost it was going to be for the kids, right? Not being able to see other people and that connection that we have. I mean, whether you like school or not, like there's a value to just being with other people. And I think we feel that not being able to go to church physically with one another. So there's that concern as well, just for the sake of like that interaction. Personally, I saw it and I almost kind of like the challenge of it in terms of what I could produce, what I could actually develop in terms of my own career. I was at that, I don't know, the mid-career, not crisis, but that phase where like, I just need something new. So in some ways it came at a good time for me, but yeah, it's definitely not perfect and it's not actually preferred by any means, but it was a challenge that I kind of wanted to meet myself.
I would be interested in hearing about what are some examples of things that you've had to reimagine or innovate to be engaging in this distance learning environment. Are there some things that you can share, some examples you can share of some things that you've done?
A lot of stuff is trying to replicate. I've been trying to replicate as much as I do in class as possible, but and so if it's things like, I mean, for some things it's actually helpful in terms of, hey, let's go ahead and share writing, for instance, and you go very easy, pull up a whiteboard that everyone can actually see. No one's like trying to see, like if they're sitting in the back of the room saying like, I can't see a thing, I don't know what's going on, but everybody's got a screen, you can actually see what's going on. So in some parts it's been really helpful. Other things in terms of reimagining how even things like group work functions in these breakout rooms, like that's if there's so much extra planning as to who goes in which group, like even easy things in the past, like, you know, pair share, go to find someone's seat and share with them. Now all of a sudden it's like, I can't do that, right? Gallery walks where they go and they take a look at posters and documents, like being able to take all that and place it into my website, for instance, and say like, all right, here's the images, you go from station to station to station as such. So there's been some things that I'm trying to mirror almost exactly just as a digital format, but some things just aren't possible. So those are a few things that I'm trying to do to fill in the time. I don't know if Wendy's got some other creative, got her creative juices flowing as well.
Well, ditto a lot to what you said about those activities. I'm trying to maintain the same sense of routines, but obviously in a completely different format. I think a lot of what's changed for me, because middle school is a lot of behavior and managing students and large groups of squirrely big kids. And so that definitely has changed. One thing that usually works for me in the classroom is that I'm all over them and the kids know that I will see them and I will know where they are on that assignment, whether they're across the room from me or right next to me. My eyes are everywhere on them. And that is almost impossible here. My students have been fairly compliant with turning on their cameras at different parts. And I kind of made that clear at the beginning. I know we're not allowed to mandate that, but I've asked them at the beginning of class, the end of class, and during this and that time, I'd really like to see, your face. And so I try and make a point of saying, okay, if you're texting 4 people over here in the column 4 of my screen, please put your phones away. And if you're snacking, don't forget to get a napkin. So I try and just, comment, let the kids know I see them. And for middle school age, it's super important that they feel that sense of being seen. I think they haven't quite reached the anonymity of high school yet, where they like to just disappear. They try to disappear, but they still want the adults' attention a whole lot. So I just do what I can through screens without climbing through the screen itself.
So you make a good point that I think that by having your students know that you want to see them, that shows that you care about them as a person, not just a rectangle on the screen. And I think that respect is earned both ways, right? There are things that you do as a teacher that will earn your students' respect. And so what do you think those things are? What are some of the things that you do especially to earn your students' respect?
So I'd like to try and touch base with each kid as much as possible. I try and say every name at least twice in a class period. Sometimes I make it, sometimes I don't. I write written comments to them on Google Classroom. I try and find the ones I haven't addressed recently on Google Classroom or on the remind messaging, and just try and say something that's non-academic or teacherish. And just say something like, hey, I noticed that, every day you come in, you're sitting up straight and look so attentive. Oh, that sounds teacherish. Hold on. Something else like, oh, I like what you wrote about there. I'd love to go there as well someday. That sounded like so much fun. And just try and form a relationship that way. Also for middle school, I have to kind of call them out sometimes to get that respect from them, but not in a rude way. So like if they did not change their name to a last name, comma, first name, today, for example, I was saying, we have 3 more people who've not done that. And I'm about to call out their names loud and clear. And they kind of snapped to attention with that type of directive. And so it's not my natural personality to do that, but it does keep their attention. And we do have good relationships ultimately, because they have a sense of, listen to Miss Yee, but she can also be a joker too, which is, yeah.
It's good that they could see different sides of you and start to see you as a human being and not just as a teacher. Wayne, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, a lot of it's just like you have to engage, and it is, for lack of a better term, there's an entertainment factor in it as well, right? So you come in with a smile, come in with energy, and you just keep that energy level up. And so there's a bit of that in terms of produce as much charisma as you can, they squeeze, in this case, into a camera, right? So there's that interacting with the camera and saying like, hey, I see you guys, what's going on, right? Joke when you can, go on tangents when you can, but a lot of it is the seriousness of the work itself, right? So there's the mix of like entertain, but then also like this teacher means business, right? And that. And at least for me, just being around at the same school for such a long time too, like there's a reputation to go along with it as well. And so when you go in my class, they mean business. And when it's regular school time, and those who've had me before will know, teaching from bell to bell, right? That entire 90 minutes where it's going to be business. So it's that mix of like, I'm not here to waste your time. And so the kids, I think, know, and they come in saying like, okay, this is a class where, because there are classes where like kids know, Like that's where I go and do homework from other classes in. But like for my class, that's not the case. So they know I handled my end of the bargain, and I think it opens up an opportunity for them to say like, okay, I want to do the same as well. That type of entertainment, but seriousness as well.
Caitlin and Alyssa, I'm wondering when you connected with teachers and when you felt that teachers cared about you as students, what were some of the things that they did?
Yeah, so I really like what Uncle Wayne was talking about. Like for me personally, that is really important to know that the teacher means business and is there to teach. But also, yeah, like being real with students and yeah, treating things in a lighthearted way when appropriate. I think that helps relax students a lot more. Definitely when I've had teachers who are passionate about their subject, that obviously helps a lot at getting me more excited too, even if I don't like the subject as much. And it's also really good when the teacher is not treating class time as a therapy session. I've definitely had teachers who have done that before, and that does not help me learn. And the same thing, like if a teacher is recommending that students go like watch other videos without like actually teaching. I definitely know that videos can be used like to supplement the teacher's lesson, and I think that's great. But then it becomes a problem if the teacher's like, okay, I'm not going to teach today. I'm just only going to show you these things for like the week or possibly even the whole term. Who knows? But yeah, that's not helpful for me.
It sounds like when teachers teach and they're serious and they're prepared, that kind of shows that they respect their subject area and they respect you as a student, that you're there to learn. Alyssa, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when teachers treat us as if we're actually a small portion of their life, it really shows the students that like, oh wow, we matter to some extent, like what they're doing, they actually care about. Like when a teacher comes in and they are, you know, starting their lecture and then they go on talking about like their kids or like what they did over the weekend or something funny that happened, it really brings the environment up and everyone kind of feels like, oh, I'm invested in my teacher's kid's life now. Like, what is he doing now? Oh, is he falling down the stairs again? Like those type of things. And while, you know, on the teacher's end, some teachers are like, oh, I don't really want to talk about myself. Like that feels kind of, you know, self-indulgent or like focused. But for the students, it's really a way that we can connect on a personal level as much as we can, knowing that we are both people and they see me as a person because they're treating me like I'm a person in their life. And so I can treat them like they're a person as well. And I noticed that, yeah, that's something that a lot of kids really engage with, even when you don't really expect it. And also kind of building off what Caitlin was saying, teachers who come prepared, who come knowing what they want you to learn and not, you know, being like, oh, I don't know quite what we're gonna do today, or I don't really know exactly what this is, but like someone else can teach you, like there's a video online and like they can explain it well enough. Like I know that that's happened for a lot of students. And so it's really a sign of respect when teachers do come in with a plan, they know what they want to teach. But then also, you know, if a student comes up and says like, hey, can you explain this for a little bit longer? Then the teacher goes, yeah, of course I can, you know, go over that. We can go over it again tomorrow. It shows that there's a way of communication and it allows the students to respect and connect with that teacher.
All right, great, thanks. Alyssa and Caitlin, I know that students out there are having to study a little bit more independently because they have the synchronous time and they have this asynchronous time. Can you share a little bit about what you've learned over the years about how to study on your own and study skills that you've had to employ, particularly with online learning?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, especially, you know, even at a young age, is to know how the individual learns the best, because each student learns in a different way. And that's something for me, especially, I learn in a different way than a lot of my peers. I have a hard time just listening to instructions and like absorbing it. So what's helpful for me, of course, is to take notes, but then also when I'm at home, if I have to review the notes, to speak it out loud to myself, like to lecture to myself. that's the way that I best learn. I can't just like read it. If I read it over and over again, I really won't remember it. I have to do something active to teach myself it. And so I think the biggest thing is for, even at a young age, this is something I learned in elementary school when I had to do like memorization tests, is what way do you best learn and how can you implement that way into how you absorb material in high school, eventually in college, and eventually in the workforce or workplace. So yeah.
Caitlin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think like Alyssa was saying, having it start like in elementary school and then developing as you go through middle school and high school, college and beyond, it is really important to figure out like what works for you. Also like what setting works for you. A lot of my friends, they need music to study, or so they say. But for me, I don't like listening to music while I study. I actually just prefer like normal background noise. I don't know if that's because of the background noise that I grew up with or not, but it helps me. So like, yeah, like Alyssa was saying, figuring out what will best help you learn on your own, or maybe in groups. Definitely practice, as I'm sure like everyone knows, practice helps. As my brother likes to say, readers are leaders. So when you're reading, like read for comprehension, as my sister does, make a schedule and stick to it. My sister is an expert at this, and I definitely appreciate that example from her. I've also found in college that accountability really helps. Having other people not even necessarily work on the project with you, but just check in with you, like, okay, did you actually finish that paper like when you wanted to, or did you get to question number whatever like by tonight, and things like that. And then also take breaks. As my dad always reminds me, it's very important to take breaks and stretch and walk around. So yeah, and refresh your brain too. So I think those are some study skills that I've had to use over the years.
Thanks, great tips. For any of you on the panel, what advice would you give to students who are struggling with classes online? Because as we know, it's not for everyone, but it's what we have right now. So what advice would you give students? Maybe they find it boring or they don't understand the material. What would you suggest for them?
Well, that's a tough one. I think even if kids at school were complaining of boredom or having trouble with an academic, there's your basic run-of-the-mill responses, like ask your teachers for help. You have to help yourself because this is your time. Your grades are counting. There's all those general statements we give that kind of go in one ear and out the other. And again, I'm middle school, so giving kids advice like that, they stopped listening when I first started speaking. Ultimately, they just kind of want to feel better at that moment. And so at this time with the pandemic and distance learning, it can be a comfort to remind them this is temporary. The situation is temporary. Almost the entire nation and country is experiencing this, and probably thousands of people are feeling like you. And so, it's temporary. It's not forever. That's not very comforting, but at least there is some light that we will be back in the classroom one day, and we're all going to be so happy to be at school, the place that some kids probably never thought they'd say, I just want to go back to school, and now we all just want to go back to school for the most part and miss those days. So we can look forward to that. It'll be like one big party when we start stepping onto the school campus and see kids and adults, and, we'll celebrate and probably high five kids we never even have spoken to before. So we can look forward to that, and we'll be going through all that together.
I think that's a difficult, that's a difficult question to ask. But I mean, I think what Caitlin was talking about earlier about that accountability piece. So I don't know about if you're personally struggling, but if you're not and you're doing okay, I think it would be really useful to have that accountability piece. I think it's a little bit harder in high school. In college, that it almost automatically happens sometimes. You don't know how it does, it just does. But in high school, I think you have to be a little bit more proactive because you're almost expected to see each other at school. And I think I would probably encourage a lot of the boys who don't communicate as well. I think a lot of the girls are a little bit better at it, but boys who don't communicate, I think I would challenge you to actually, like, I don't know, give your friend a call, or for a lot of you guys who, I don't know, do things like game together or something like that, actually make like a gaming date and say like, hey, let's play Call of Duty at this time, or whatever kids play these days. I don't know. But just for that sake of like that connection, because you actually may actually have to seek it. And so if you feel okay, like go reach out to your friends, or the ones that you don't talk to or message to at some point, because we as teachers, we would love to see that is happening as well, that our kids are able to do that. So if you're struggling, I don't know, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I do think you do have to be more proactive in middle school and high school especially. And I know that sometimes that's really hard, because you might feel like asking for help is not an option, but asking for help is always an option. And so, yeah, I would encourage students to find someone who is like, yeah, passionate and patient about maybe a specific subject they might be struggling with. And maybe that person can help them out. And just, I don't know, it reminds me of like cooking. If you're cooking a meal, when you're the person who cooks it, it's so much better. And so if you are being proactive and investing, yeah, in your education, like in the same way you would invest in food, then maybe it'll be a little better, even though that these times are definitely really challenging.
Yeah, I definitely think that finding someone that is passionate in that subject is so helpful, because when you see someone who's passionate, you can't help but kind of feed off that joy that they have. Like when you're around someone who's talking about something they really love, like you can just like feel it when they're talking about it. And so it really draws you in. And I think that, yeah, one of the things that it is a good distinguishing factor is, are you going to the classes just to pass? And if you are going just to pass, like really you're not really getting anything out of the class. I think there's like a chunk of students who like, they don't have to, they try hard enough to like get the grade, but like don't try hard enough to actually learn what's happening or learn what's going on. And I can totally say that I was one of those students who in some of my classes, I just took it to pass it because I had to take it. So I took it to pass it. But really what that does is that it makes it so that, you're not really invested in what's going on, and therefore you get bored easily. So really, even in any subject, there's something that you can find that is kind of fascinating, that's kind of interesting. And especially being surrounded by people who are passionate about it, it really does help that sink in and see how, wow, that is cool. Even if it's not my thing, it's someone else's thing. And so that perspective is helpful, especially when, online, and it might be not as engaging as, being in a big, bustling class and all, but.
Something I've been trying to push for my 8th graders is 3 before me. Ask 3 people before you ask me. And so the first thing you have to ask is your own resources, Google Classroom. Go back and see the instructions again, the written instructions. If there was an instructional video, watch that again and see if your question is answered. The next 2 you can ask are study buddies, which are kids I've grouped together, and we talked about being willing to help when asked, being willing to give help, being willing to ask for help. And so they can look each other's names up and Synergy email them. And so I asked them to write down each other's names and start an email and just ask each other about stuff that Crazy Miss Yee said they had to do, and just check in with each other outside. And then if they still don't have their answer, definitely come ask me, because that's what I'm definitely here for. Last week, the elementary teachers, Vivian Chung, had brought up advocating for themselves. Middle school is huge, trying to teach them to advocate for themselves, because suddenly when they get to high school, there's a lot more expectation put onto them. They're bigger, they look like adults, younger adults. At this time, a lot of them are full-sized human beings. And so expectations are sometimes placed on them, but they haven't quite developed that sense of how to ask, when to ask, and who to ask. And so it takes a lot of training over the 2 years that they're with us to ask. And so through distance learning, it's just coach them, and kind of cross our fingers, pray for them that they will remember to ask at least one of those 3, if not me. I mean, yes, I'm here for them, but I won't always be, right? They need to learn how to help themselves. So I was really excited when Vivian brought that up last week, because again, it's a huge thing for 7th and 8th grade.
And I noticed that 3 before me doesn't include asking your parents. I know that in middle school, it's really that grade where, you know, parents have to let go and they need to let the students do what they're going to do so that they can learn to be independent. So you bring up a good point about that. We've had some questions from people in the audience. So I want to ask a few of those questions. One of them is understanding that during distance learning, teachers aren't going to be able to cover all the material that they would have covered during a traditional brick and mortar year. What percentage of instruction do you find that you need to leave out in order to teach in a distance learning situation, and how do you kind of determine that?
In the spring, when it was all asynchronous learning, I think it ended up cutting about half, if not more. With synchronous learning, it's actually helped. I probably leave out about a third of what I normally do. And a lot of decisions have to be made, and partially because I teach AP, I have to figure out, and they haven't given us any information as to what the test actually looks like, but I have my guesses, and it's probably going to involve writing. So a lot of it's going to be based on skill with the 3 type of writing styles that I would have to teach, and I would have to cut back some actual curriculum that I would normally teach on a normal basis, realizing, hey, look, if I teach the skills, I think they'll be fine. And not only that, but we're giving less work, or I'm giving a lot less work than before. So things that I would reinforce multiple times, I may not have to be able to do that. So if I've assigned a chapter of reading where you would have to take notes and also complete flashcards at the same time, it becomes, instead of a both proposition, it becomes an either or kind of deal. So understanding that you can only spend so much time in front of a screen, because even if you're taking notes, that has to be done now on a screen and so forth. So just knowing that, okay, at some point these kids need to go outside, get some fresh air, have dinner with their parents and siblings and so forth. So it's a lot of decisions that I make that are hard, because I mean, I go full out like 90 minutes and so forth, but now it's like, all right, I've got that 55 and that 20-minute, like I'm gonna squeeze everything I can out of it. So yeah, about 2/3.
For me, I have 8th grade honors, and it pains me to know that while my expectations have to stay high and I can maintain some rigor while we're there, it's not what the 9 honors class would be wanting an 8th grade honors to be prepared with. But, comfort in knowing the high schools are all going to have all 8th grade, all incoming 9th grade honor students in the same boat. I've had to drop quite a few things. A lot of it is discussion and the in-depth work that we would normally get during class. There is hardly any discussion that we can do as a group, partly because they're on multiple screens. So I'd have to say, hold on, hold your fingers out. Let me scroll to my 2nd screen and then my 3rd screen, keep your fingers up. And that just takes away a couple seconds. And I do it, but it's kind of like, just hoping that they don't get tired of that. We have class discussions in the chat box. They can unmute themselves, but then you get kids who forget to mute themselves back. So, you either have to address it or frantically look through the multiple screens to find who's not muted. So the class discussion element has gone down a lot. The amount of work that I've given has also gone down a lot. I don't want to give a ton of own work, as my daughter calls it, because everything is homework right now. I can't bring myself to say homework. The do on your own work. It's cut down so much because I don't want them to be sitting there doing schoolwork. Like Wayne said, they need to get up and go be human beings, spend time with their family, and just not be sitting down somewhere doing schoolwork, because they've done that in a very strange, unnatural way already for many hours a day. And now is their chance to go be human beings. And, they need to be active as well. So I want to encourage that. Yeah. And it's just kind of what it is. It's hard to let go of the plans that, we're all used to having, but we have to let some things go as long as we're hitting our standards.
Do you have any suggestions for students out there who want to learn that third of material that you haven't covered or weren't able to cover, that want to make sure that they're really ready for college and that they own all of the material? what suggestions do you have for those students?
For at least for my kids, I would probably start with I don't recommend it, because again, these are circumstances where, like, first of all, you got to know yourself, and I think for most kids, like, if they're asking for that much more, then I have to think, I have to understand the kid. Can they actually handle it and actually do it during this particular time period? Are their parents forcing them to do it? Because that's always a question as well. And for most kids, I would have to probably say it's like, look, it's about your own personal health right now. Like that third of the material or those skills, you'll develop them over time, right? You'll get those. And especially with history, you're gonna forget most of it anyway. So this is coming from your history teacher. So if you've forgotten all your history, it's okay. You know, it's about engaging with the material. It's about the skills that you learn, the experience that you have, right? And so that added study, I don't think necessarily is going to help per se. Now, there's always books. I can always assign you extra chapters, or here's this practice exam, but I don't know what you're going to get from it in the long run, right? So I think it's more of a question of your own personal health than like, here's more work, which I have, but I would maybe talk them out of it. So,
Wendy, do you have anything to add to that?
I would echo Wayne. I think just give yourself a break. Do what is given to you. Go read a book if you want to enrich your mind a little bit more. Don't get tied down to material itself, because you'll go nuts trying to achieve that which you don't even know the end to. And it's okay. You are not expected to, but there are other enriching things you can do, and you won't get the chance to. So, you know, go read a book you never thought you'd read before. You know, pick one up that does not interest you and give it a try, something like that.
All right, great. Now, this question is a little bit different than what we've kind of discussed before, but inquiring minds want to know, what do teachers do during breaks between classes, or breaks when they're not with students, when students are in breakout rooms in particular, and then when there's a break between classes?
Well, I'm a mom and I have 3 kids at home. So any chance I get, I run up and down the stairs, which is awesome exercise, by the way. So I'm not upset about having to do that at all. And I peek in, pat them on the shoulder, thumbs up, thumbs down, grab my coffee, run back one circle, start letting kids into the next one. And hopefully remember to change my name, because sometimes it changes on me. What I would like to do is kind of just sit back and wait for the next class to come in, check my phone, check my emails, and, you know, just kind of hang out and wait, since it's just on the computer. No, that doesn't happen. I can't foresee that ever happening. It's a pretty busy break in between, all the way till whatever, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock.
first of all, like I'm working in my own classroom, but I'll tell you this, it's weird. Like you send kids out, so they're all in breakout rooms. Your Zoom room is empty, right? And then now it's just silent in your empty classroom by yourself, right? And so the first few times that it happened, like I didn't know what to do with myself. I'm like, what in the world am I doing? So I revert back to things I normally do, like go check an email, take attendance, because I always forget to take roll. I do by week, I call it air sports. Like I'll pretend I'm actually golfing. I'll practice my golf swing. I brought in a little basketball hoop that a coworker had left, so I'll shoot some baskets here and there, because you have a few seconds before you start hopping into breakout rooms or whatever it might be. But I'll just tell you, it is weird. So
if we are talking breakout rooms, I was just thinking about breaks. I do go into their breakout rooms to just make an appearance and listen in and nod, ask a few questions, say, all right, good job, see you later, and then just hop into the next one.
yeah, it's really strange when they find out you're there, and then all of a sudden all the conversation ends. You're like,
and they all mute, and then yeah, exactly.
The video goes off. All of a sudden, it's like, yeah.
So both of you spend a lot of time on Zoom. Another question that came up was, are you tired and ready for a nap after you're done for the day? Do you go home and take a nap? That was one of the questions.
I think I'm a little too keyed up in my mind, reeling for what still needs to be done and what has to get ready for tomorrow. So maybe I might feel physically tired, but I got to keep going. We were kind of joking earlier that parenthood has prepared us to be distance learning teachers. And so it's kind of true, though. We just work straight through fatigue with as clear a mind as we can have and sip coffee in between.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. When I go home, I know I have to be dad, right? So I've got to, I've got to put that, I got to put that face on and make sure I'm doing good by my kids, doing good by my wife, and so making sure that we have conversation and things like that, and then get the kids down like everything's perfectly normal. But once the kids are down, it's it's not like, hey, let's go to bed. I got to get back to work until I go to bed. So that's what's been different, right? Our administrative staff joke that like, hey, everybody's a first-year teacher this year, right? And the only thing that like, I don't feel as uncomfortable as a first-year teacher, but I feel as tired as I was as a first-year teacher in terms of this nonstop cycle of work that didn't seem to end. So I would like a nap. That would sound really nice, but I don't think we could afford it.
So what do you all do for self-care? What are some things that you do so that you have the brain width in order to keep going?
I like to go out with my kids to either just take walks around the block. I'll go myself if I can't drag anyone out with me. We do karate. So now that the air is clear again, we go a couple times a week, and they're awesome because they opened up the lessons in the park since we can't do it in a dojo. And it's so nice to just be among the trees and the grass and be out there. And just having that change of scenery is awesome. We try and exercise, definitely take walks. We learned how to play soccer, football, baseball, throw frisbees. We're pretty bad at it, honestly. We can't catch anything. Now we've learned to kick in the right direction. So, we're gaining some ground.
Can I say no comment for this one? Self-care.
Okay.
My self-care is actually working at work in my classroom, because we actually do have a few teachers around. So about maybe a quarter of our staff is actually on campus. So just seeing other people, other adults, and having adult conversations, either with my coworkers or coming home and having conversation with my wife. That's about as far as I get. So.
Okay. All right. What would you want to make sure parents know and understand, particularly about this time in their child's education?
Just being able to see other teachers, at least a quarter of our staff, and then communicating with the department that I work with as well. We are all working really hard. Okay, let me rephrase it. Not all. I can't guarantee that number. But I think a lot of us are working a lot harder than we normally do. And I work with a lot of workaholics and who put in hours upon hours, and they are working more hours than they have before. And so I think a real concerted effort to really make this work. I mean, I'll use a teacher who's maybe about a year or two, probably 2 years from retirement. And he's been doing this 30 plus years. I think it's 32nd year, but he's learning all sorts of new stuff. He gets excited when he learns a new thing on Zoom. And it's like, hey, I just discovered this. But that's the effort that's being made by the staff that I see. So sometimes the product isn't that great because this isn't what we signed up for by any means. None of us signed up to be YouTube stars. That wasn't the goal, but people are working really hard, I think. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I will echo that. It's not to toot my own horn either, to just say, hey, look at all I'm doing. But if we don't reply to an email within the same day, it's not that I was lazy and just decided to sign off at 6 o'clock because I'm off, I'm off duty, this or that. It's just because I didn't notice it buried under 60 others that I had replied to, for example. I know you can't really make anyone understand stuff like that unless you're in anyone else's shoes, because we don't understand what they're looking at too when they see their kids either struggling or thriving through distance learning. But to just know that we want their kids to do well. We want their kids to be well. We want their families to be well during this time as well. So if we're not challenging them too much, it's not because we're being lazy to grade, it's because we don't want to push them too much. We don't know what circumstances they're facing or what pressure they're going under as a family or as an individual while trying to manage schoolwork at the same time. If we're giving too much work, then we're seen as overbearing, non-understanding, non-equitable, blah, blah, blah. If we're giving not enough, then we're seen as, lazy, don't want to grade, and all this other stuff. There doesn't seem to be a place to completely satisfy the parents. So, things I wish the parents knew, that could be a whole nother topic. But just that, yeah, we are working really hard and we care about their families and really just want everyone to do the best they can given the circumstances.
Speaking of parents, what are some skills technology-wise that would be expected of students this year in particular that they need to be able to do?
Students need to remember their passwords. Please write their passwords down in a place that they can find it. And if they change the password, write it down, cross out the old one. I think that's a lesson learned for all adults, right? When's the last time you forgot a password? Was it recently? It may just have been. And so they're learning all these skills that we adults are still struggling with. So things like remembering your password, be technologically safe. Don't just research on any sites, but look for the .gov, .org, .edus. Technology-wise, how to sit in front of a computer and screen, how to angle the computer, the height of the screen. Definitely watch your position with the mouse. There's all those little things. I don't know that we'd ever achieve all that for our students, but it'd be great if parents were able to check in on the kids and see if all those things are in check. And just being able to navigate the sites that they have to. Know that there's a school website with resources and a newsletter with announcements. Oh, please check your email. Check your email and check for a response if you've emailed your teacher, because teachers will reply, you just don't go back and look for it. So some basics there.
Wayne, anything to add?
I think there's real practice in terms of like 21st century skills of you've got a computer in front of you, now multitask, right? Juggle stuff on your screen, like learning shortcuts in terms of like, okay, how do I get this screen here and still have the chat window and still be able to see, to have that little participants tab at the bottom where, and so that type of juggling, I think exists probably in most work environments at some point. So I guess in a lot of ways, like that's good practice, but kids will need to be able to handle that in addition to, doing it with background noises and so forth. So the environment's important. Like I had a kid we were taking a test today and like she wrote in the chat, like there's so much noise behind me. I don't know what. Be able to handle those particular things, I think it's really important in doing so.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Ladies, do you have anything else to add to that? Maybe any things that that helped you with technology or helped it go more smoothly for you? Any tips?
I think the main thing, I am not skilled with technology at all. Anyone who knows me will know this. It's not an age thing. There are people way older than me who are so much better at it than I am. But like my mom always says, people can change and just try. So I have to tell myself, Caitlin, just try. So I don't know if there is a platform or technology thing that students are not sure how to use. Yeah, I would tell them, yeah, just try. Give yourself a little slack. Like everyone is learning new things right now. And so, yeah, I would tell students, don't panic. Don't panic if you're accidentally unmuted and you say something. Just mute yourself as soon as possible. Things like that. And for parents, don't freak out if your kid is, struggling with technology, and if you feel like you're unable to help them. It's okay. Kids are resilient. They'll figure it out, and they have lots of friends, teachers to help them. So
yeah, I would say along with that to use your resources of your computer and online resources. Like if you don't know how to do something on your computer, it's very easy to Google it and say, like, you ask Google, like, how do I XYZ on a Mac, or how do I XYZ on a Windows? And there's a lot of different sources out there that can easily teach you how to do some technological tricks and tips. So those resources are great. But also, I think for students and parents, I think that it is great for the parents to understand that they need to let the students learn how to do it on their own and know how to self-advocate for them to learn and to be able to handle that on their own. Because sometimes when parents do it for the kids, it doesn't actually allow the kids to learn. So it is helpful sometimes to just let the kids fail and let them learn and how to do it correctly. And they need that push sometimes, because sometimes kids, they don't know how to fail. And so then they don't, if they do something wrong, they're like, I don't know what to do. And they go for the parents for help. But, you know, sometimes you have to learn on your own. So I think that's something that, you know, kids can really work on for those who struggle with that.
Now, that was a really good piece of advice that a fellow colleague gave me when Garrett, my oldest, went to middle school. She said to me, you know, middle school grades don't count. You need to let him sink or swim and do his best in middle school without you. You can't hover over him. He'll never learn to be independent and you know, have all these study skills in place. And so that's what I did. I just let him do his thing in middle school, and he graduated from college and he's working in graduate school now. So I guess it does work to just hands off your students when they get to middle school. There was another question that was submitted, and it's about Zoom bombing. And they wanted to know, have you experienced any Zoom bombing, and what protocols are in place, either district-wise or in your classroom, to you know, just kind of deal with that situation?
I have had that happen. Some other classes in my school site also had that happen, but mine was last week. Honestly, I was a little giddy. I was like, yay, I got my first Zoom bomber, and the kids were still in the room with me. And so number one, I did want to alert them to it because, you know, it was real and it's not just something that we all hear about. So I wanted them to kind of play out the situation with me. So I told them, oh, goody guys, what should we do? And then they all started telling me, you know, oh, you should let them in and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I was in the middle of putting them in breakout rooms because it was kind of like a lockdown drill. I wanted to get the kids out of there. And, you know, other teachers had said we can pull up reports of the identity of the Zoom bomber, but we would have to let them into the meeting. So in my mind, I wanted to let the Zoom bomber in, but I needed to get the kids out. So I was putting them into breakout rooms while I was kind of teasing them along. And then when they were all safe in their breakout rooms and they kind of knew there was a plan to stay there until I called them back, and I gave them a question to discuss too. I didn't just say, go, get out of here. Then I let the Zoom bomber in and I waved a pumpkin in the camera to just kind of, you know, I wasn't going to show my face in case I'm being screenshotted. There was a lot of cursing, very decorative language, and I welcomed the person in and asked them, what can I do for them? And right in the middle of a piece of profanity, he kind of cut off and went, and then he hung up. And he wasn't able to be traced because it was an anonymous email. But after that, I talked to all my classes about having a plan that, you know, I practiced also myself sending kids out to breakout rooms within 10 seconds. So if that happened again, I would be ready and the kids would know. I think I had a code word for them, which I probably shouldn't say live on YouTube. Then I teach beginning English students also. And so my plan for them was just, if I say this, then you all will go into a room by yourself and just wait for Miss Yee. Don't say anything. It'll be a game. And because it was just hard to explain Zoom bombing in, you know, 5 different languages and the concept of it. So we have a plan. We don't have a school-wide plan. We don't have a district-wide plan, not that I've heard of, but people in school sites are aware of it. Some other teachers I've heard of, they kind of just tried to get them off as quick as possible. Yeah, it'd be nice if there was some protocol.
yeah, I haven't joined the club yet, so I have been Zoom bomb free, and so I hope no one's listening to this and saying like I would like to be the first one. So I have got no response to that.
Well,
I'm
thank
coming
you.
in tomorrow. That's what I'm doing during my break.
Great. I thank you for answering all of these questions tonight, but I'd really like to know what you've learned. What have you learned about yourself during this pandemic? That's a question for all of you. What have you learned about yourself?
I'll start. In some ways I had hinted at this before in terms of like sort of being midway through my career, but sort of at that 15-year mark of doing this for a while, and maybe it's a combination of that, and then a combination of just having my own kids at such a young age, where they're at that age where they don't listen to you. Oh, they do. I mean, but not immediately, not what you're used to, not what I'm used to in the classroom. And so I started seeing myself being, I think, a lot less patient. I definitely had a lot less energy and time for the students. I can't call them my kids anymore, right? Because I have real kids. And so there was a point where like I really needed to like sit back and reflect on like what's wrong, like what's going on. Like I've had colleagues that are about the same, who've put in about same service time where they're leaving the profession at this point, and not something I want to do, but just to self-reflect and say like, hey, what's going on? And realizing like, I just didn't care about my students as much as I used to. And I didn't have the time, I didn't have the effort, I didn't have the energy to do it. And so this is a reflection time. I feel like God has like been telling me like, hey, like it doesn't matter how tired you are, or you're just worried about the curriculum, like these, like patience for the kids, patience and being able to build relationship with them is really important. Like that's why you put me where I am right now. And so it's not all about the curriculum or the skills or whatnot, but that's really got to be a piece that I work on when it's really hard right now. But it definitely needs to be a piece when things get back to normal. If they ever get back to normal, I really need to be focusing on knowing that like, it's like regardless, like I'm a beacon of Christ on campus, right? And I need to continue to do that. And it starts with not just teaching well, but then also being patient with the kids, building relationship, caring about what's going on with them as well. So yeah, that's what I've learned.
Thank you.
I can go next. I think professionally, well, both personally and professionally, it's kind of definitely mixed at this point. I've learned to just say whoops and let a lot of things go, and to have a lot more grace with my own expectations of my performance and my expectations on others. And it's a constant reminder to have grace towards others. That's something, the concept of grace, God's grace upon us, we sing about it, we pray about it, all this. And when it comes down to it, if I didn't like the tone of a colleague's email, I get a little offended. But then, hey, let me remember that they're chunking that into a tiny portion of their crazy day as well, and let me not hold it against them. And so it's constant reminding myself, and just a refreshing thought of, God's grace is reflected in almost everything that happens these days. You can plan all you want, and then everything is just thrown out the window, and you're suddenly faced with, you need a new plan, and it needs to happen right now with the 40 kids right in front of you, and it needs to last for the next few hours. Things happen, and we need to go with it, but also be productive. And if it doesn't happen, though, exactly as we hope it does, it's okay. It's okay for me. It's okay for the kids. Let's get through it together the best we can, if that makes sense. Teaching is a mission field for me. I do try and share as much love with the kids as possible within the realms of the academic teaching. And so I think through this time, I think that's one thing I would like to carry out.
Thanks. Caitlin, Alyssa, do you have anything that you've learned through this pandemic?
Yeah. I think that one of the things that, well, I guess something that you don't realize until, you know, you kind of go through it is how fast time goes by. And like, I think a lot of us as college students, we forget how thankful we should be to be in our position of we have these, you know, a certain amount of time to be able to study a certain subject, to be surrounded by people who are also, you know, studying that subject, to be surrounded by people who are kind of in the same place of in the same place of life as you and are kind of doing the same thing. And that time is actually really short and it feels much longer. But I think during the pandemic, we realized, wow, time does really fly really fast. And just to be thankful for that and to be thankful for the communities that you can build and be a part of during your time in school. I think that also this can apply to middle school and high schoolers too. You know, like it's a cliche that adults say that like, oh, high school is the best time of your life. That's arguable, but it is a special time in which you know, you're figuring out where you want to go. And maybe you might hit a point in your life where you're no longer figuring out, you know, where you're going to go. So it is a cool place to be, and you don't want to have to rush through it too fast. So I think that, you know, God's really showing me that there are these parts of your life that you get to really treasure for those moments. And so that when we're in those moments, we should treasure them, even if they have downs like the pandemic. We can still treasure them. We're going to laugh at it in 10 years. Oh yeah, we wore masks and blah, 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 blah. So we can still treasure it.
Yeah, I think being able to recognize, and see God working despite what we think is such a terrible thing is something that this quarantine has definitely been teaching me. Also, like Alyssa was saying, channeling that into savoring the moment and savoring what God is doing, like in my individual life, as well as rejoicing in the lives of others, and getting to see what He's doing in their lives, even if things didn't necessarily go the way that I planned or that I wanted them to go. I think learning to respond to that with praise and obedience has definitely been something that God has been teaching me. And like the word of encouragement said, recognizing that God is all we need. And once we recognize that, we can see that He will grow our love for Him, and He will become all that we want to. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate all of you being here tonight. And I think that I just want to close with a verse that I shared with our Sunday school teachers this year. It's Proverbs 16:9, and it kind of echoes what many of you have already said. It says that the heart of a man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. And I chose it because it just seems as though, you know, our natural instinct is to run around and try to make plans and to try to do things and to do things in the way that we want to do them and do everything in our own power to make it happen, right? But truly though, God has a purpose for each of us. And I think that Wayne alluded to it earlier as well. And He has planned for us to do specific things during this pandemic. And He has that plan. And what I've seen God do during this pandemic is I've seen Him continue to work, that God doesn't stop because we're in a pandemic. He is working, He has a plan, and He has a purpose for each of us. And whatever it is He's called us to do, whether it to be a student or a teacher or whatever it is, He will give us exactly what we need to fulfill His purposes. And so I think that we can really just hold to that. And so I'm just going to close this time with a time of prayer. And again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for those who are choosing to watch this panel. And we've just really enjoyed just sharing our lives with all of you during this time. And we hope that these sessions have been an encouragement to some of you. So let's just close with a word of prayer. Father God, we thank You that You are the same yesterday, today, and forever. We thank You that even though there's a pandemic going on, Father, we see You working in the lives of teachers and the lives of students, Lord. And we pray that as the teachers continue to work to serve the kids that You've entrusted to them, that You will give them the wisdom and the patience and the grace that they need. Father, for those who are teachers who are Christians out there, we just pray that they can continue to shine a light for you, Lord, and for students that are Christians out there, that they can show their teachers the grace that you extend to them. And also for the parents out there, that they can be patient with their children and extend to teachers the grace that you've extended to them, Father. So we thank you for these times that you've given us, and we pray that we might continue to look to you and the steps that you've planned for us and not our own. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Thank you everyone for being here tonight.